Thanks for tuning into the Dinosaurs Lately podcast, the dinosaur podcast that features periodic updates recapping the latest news on the dinosaurs. My name's Ryan Rogers, and this is the podcast that targets a type of dinosaur, tries to catch you up on everything that's been published on them lately. This is the second of these interstitial episodes I've created. The goal is to keep up with all the dinosaurs news, even when I'm not publishing new episodes of the Juras-Sick Park-Cast. If you're interested in this sort of thing, I hope it helps you feel up to date. Welcome to episode 2, Ankylosaurs, from the summer of 2025, recorded July 28th, 2025. A continued thank you to Christoph Oakes of Snail, S-N-A-L-E. Check out his incredible albums on Spotify and Bandcamp. Today's intro is Sally Ride from the album Charlemagne, and our outro is Late Bloomer from Snail's self-titled debut album, Snail. This episode, we're catching up on Ankylosaurs. A few new species of Ankylosaur have been named recently, and we'll start with a 2024 paper named A New Ankylosaurid Dinosaur from the Upper Cretaceous of Jiangxi Province, southern China, published in Historical Biology in November 2024. The paper begins reminding us Ankylosauria is a diverse clade of quadrupedal herbivorous dinosaurs characterized by a parasagittal row of osteoderms on the dorsolateral surface of the body and heavily armored skull. In other words, they were covered in rows of bony armor all across their heads and bodies. Oh, and ankylosaurs are famous for having that bony club at the end of their tails. The paper continues, quote, Ankylosaurs lived from the Middle Jurassic to the end of the Late Cretaceous. As a subgroup of Ankylosauria, ankylosaurid dinosaurs are currently only found in Asia and North America. In Asia, they were mainly found in Mongolia and northern China. The new species is special because it's not from northern China, but rather the southeastern province of Jiangxi. The new animal is named Haoxiaozhuolong Showen, which consists of an articulated and partial skeleton without its skull or mandible. It was uncovered from the Guará Formation and dated to the Campanian age of the Late Cretaceous, where dinosaur eggs and a few other dinosaur remains have been identified. The generic name Huaxia is Chinese for China, and Zhu means armor, and Long means dragon, and the specific name Showen means painted in the shape of a beast, which comes from a cultural relic housed in the Jiangxi Province Museum, making this the Chinese armored dragon painted in the shape of a beast, which kind of sounds like a cool name. The holotype JPM N000 is housed at the Jiangxi Provincial Museum. The paper adds, phylogenetic analysis suggests that Haoxiaozhuolong Showen is a basal member of the Ankylosauridae. The Ankylosauridae are quadrupedal herbivores with leaf-shaped teeth, robust scute-covered bodies, and a distinctly domed and short snout, wedge-shaped osteoderms on their skull, scutes along their torso, and a tail club. They would have been slow-moving, perhaps walking like elephants with a columnar posture. The tail swung side to side, parallel to and slightly above the ground. The finding of Haoxiaozhuolong Showen adds diversity to the Late Cretaceous of China, which the authors elaborated upon by naming 8 other Chinese genera, of which only 2 are from southern China. So there were lots of different ankylosaurs in the area at the time, and this critter was about 6 meters long, maybe just think of like 20 feet. Haoxiaozhuolong is identified as a distinct species by 3 autapomorphies in its ischium, the shape of its humerus, and its femur-to-humerus length ratios. The tail club is preserved, and it's hemispherical, and on its surface there are many small pits and ridges. In lateral view, the height of the osteoderms is taller than the vertebrae, and the width of the tail club is greater than its length, so it's very bulbous. Haoxiaozhuolong Showen represents the second ankylosaur from the Upper Cretaceous of Jiangxi Province. The first reported ankylosaur is Datai Yingliangis, which just so happens to be our second new dinosaur in this episode. Published February 17th, 2024 in the journal Vertebrate Anatomy, Morphology, Paleontology, the paper A New Armored Dinosaur with Double Cheek Horns from the Early Late Cretaceous of Southeastern China, named Datai Yingliangis. Datai has been identified as a more derived member of the ankylosaur family, Ankylosaurinae, which have an even more lumpy and armored skull feature, which is obscured and overlapped by a diagnostically greater extent than more basal members of Ankylosauridae are. Like the previously mentioned Haoxiaozhuolong. That being said, the skulls of Haoxiaozhuolong was not recovered, so it couldn't be diagnosed as Ankylosaurinae because those elements weren't present. And such is the fossil record. The paper says Ankylosaurians reached the pinnacle of diversity in the latest Cretaceous period, but the record remains sparse in the preceding mid-Cretaceous times. Ankylosaurians known from the Albian to the Santonian stages are dominated by Asian forms with loose chronological constraints. Crichtonpelta, Jinyunpelta, Talaurus, Sagantegia, and Jiangxi are the ones they name. There is no universal agreement that all these taxa represent Ankylosaurians. Again, as a result of the incomplete fossil record, it's too fragmentary to conclusively construct phylogenetic families. New discoveries are always reconfiguring how these family trees are viewed. Generally, mid-Cretaceous ankylosaurs, says the paper, quote, appear to be derived from various points of the transition toward the post-Santonian ankylosaurians. These post-Santonian ankylosaurians are generally distinguished from non-ankylosaurian ankylosaurids by large body size, transversely wide skull and body profiles, and a prominent tail club. However, this transition remains poorly resolved because of phylogenetic instability near the base of the Ankylosauridae, coupled with insufficient record in the mid-Cretaceous stages. The data set is insufficient, which is why new discoveries are so helpful in adding more data to the analysis. Quote, as a significant addition to a small number of mid-Cretaceous ankylosaurids, we here report a new ankylosaurian from the Coniacian Turonian, or early Late Cretaceous, of southeastern China. The specimens were collected from the Zhujiang Formation, from which no vertebrate body fossils have previously been reported. Instead, the Zhujiang Formation has yielded a large number of dinosaur eggs. Two partial skeletons were discovered, identified as immature individuals showing, quote, a slightly different set of ontogenetic traits. Named Detai Yingliangis, the specimens both represent juvenile individuals and were found with the head of one resting on top of the others. Quote, the two specimens of Detai Yingliangis were found in association with the head of YLSNHM01003 resting on top of that of YLSNHM01002. Similarly, articulated juvenile specimens of Panacosaurus grangeri from the Jakota localities have been found together in an apparent rapid burial event with no evidence of post-mortem transport. The data available at hand are consistent with the hypothesis that juvenile ankylosaurids are gregarious. Said differently, adding these specimens to another ankylosaurian discovery of Panacosaurus, which also showed juveniles preserved together, is suggesting social behavior might have been an ankylosaurian trait. Oh, let's take a short second to review the title of the paper again. A new armored dinosaur with double cheek horns from the early Late Cretaceous of southeastern China. I do this because I have yet to mention the double cheek horns. The Thai is unique among ankylosaurs in having a pair of small horns protruding from either side of its face, and they have a rarely preserved series of nodules or chainmail-like armor on its throat, which sometimes you see in stegosaurs too. So that's two new types of ankylosaur named in 2024. The next two are new species of existing ankylosaurs that were also named in 2024. The next is Tianzhenosaurus chengi, named in 2024 in the paper A New Species of Ankylosaurian Dinosaur, Tianzhenosaurus chengi, from the Late Cretaceous of Tianzhen County, Shanxi Province, China, published in the Journal of the Hebei GEO University in June 2024. What details I got from this paper are from a translation from Chinese that might not be 100%, but here it goes. This new T. chengi species accompanies the previously described T. youngi, named back in 1998. The new ankylosaurid was found in the Huizhuangpu Formation in Hebei Province, China, including a skull that was low and flat and covered with irregular dermal bony tubercles. Its skull characteristics are, quote, clearly different with Tianzhenosaurus of the Middle Jurassic from Xinjiang in China, Shanxi from the Early Cretaceous from Mongolia, Ankylosaurus of the Late Jurassic, and the Late Cretaceous Euoplocephalus from North America, as well as Panocosaurus from the Late Cretaceous in China and Mongolia. The authors continue to say which species the specimen is different from, landing on the, quote, correlative characters of skull are very consistent with Tianzhenosaurus in same locality and horizon, so belongs to the genus Tianzhenosaurus. Quote, the new species discovery not only furnished materials of rare ankylosaur fossils in China, but also contributes significantly in studying the taxonomy, migration, evolution of ankylosaurs, as well as the relationship and paleogeography of the Cretaceous dinosaur faunas. Staying in China and continuing with naming new species of existing ankylosaurs, the paper New Ankylosaurid Material from the Lower Cretaceous of the Ruyang Basin, Henan Province, published in the Acta Paleontologica Sinica in March 2005. Again, this is translated from Chinese, so here goes. Quote, this study describes new ankylosaurid dinosaur fossil material discovered in the Haoling Formation of the Lower Cretaceous strata in the Ruyang Basin, Henan Province. Based on this material, a new species within the genus Jiangxi is established, Jiangxi zhongchengi. This species is characterized by unique autapomorphy, at least 5 caudal armor plates arranged in a shingle-like pattern with a distinctive swallowtail shape. You can imagine a swallowtail shape, perhaps like a forked tongue of a cartoon snake, or the double-tipped end of like a ribbon or bookmark, or maybe like the shape of a Y. You can think of 2 distinct points going down. That's the swallowtail, and then these were layered like shingles over the caudal region, which is the tail. So kind of after the hips, these 5 plates had a swallowtail point where they layered down the tail, which is a pretty distinctive trait of a dinosaur. The skull's features make the diagnosis distinctively Ankylosaurian, as mentioned earlier, and its leg measurements make it a distinct species from other species of Jiangxi luoyangensis. Z. luoyangensis was described in 2007. Quote, the discovery of Z. zhongchengi provides new insights into the evolution of Ankylosaurus in the Lower Cretaceous strata of Ruyang and enhances the species diversity of the Ruyang dinosaur fauna, says the authors. The new species is known by the holotype 41HIII0708, which is comprised of a right mandible, 14 free caudal vertebrae, and 7 fused caudal vertebrae forming the club handle, 10 hamal arches, 4 ribs, the left humerus, 1 metatarsal, and 41 osteoderms. The name honors Chinese paleontologist Liu Zhujiang and his work in Henan. The rest of the news comes from non-Chinese Ankylosaurian discoveries, and also not new species. First, published in November 2004 in the Journal of Anatomy, is the paper Microstructure and Development of the Dermal Ossicles of Antarctopelta oliveroi, a complex morphogenetic system deciphered through 3-dimensional X-ray microtomography, which is a mouthful. Ankylosaur dermal skeletons are characterized by large osteoderms, whose development and functional role have been largely investigated. The paper says, quote, however, interstitial small ossicles forming between these osteoderms have been far more overlooked, and it remains unknown whether they were formed through the ossification of a pre-existing fibrous matrix of connective tissue, through the process of metaplasia, or by a cell-induced differentiation of new fiber bundles, followed by mineralization, like neoplasia. Here, we propose a hypothesis on the developmental origin of these small ossicles in the Ankylosaurian and Antarctopelta oliveroi using light microscopy, scanning electron microscopy, and 3-dimensional virtual histology through propagation phase contract synchrotron radiation microcomputed tomography, which is another mouthful. That's right, this paper gets into the nitty-gritty about the dermal ossicles, which comprise the ankylosaur's armor. The paper says, quote, ossicles are located in the dermis. They are composed of 2 layers. 1, a thin external layer, and 2, a thick basal plate composed of collagen fiber bundles, which forms the main part of the ossicle. The external layer is made of smooth, vitreous, mineralized tissue that does not look like bone. The basal plate, however, is of osseous origin. In this basal plate, the collagen fiber bundles are organized in 2 orthogonal systems, 1 horizontal, observable in cross sections, and 1 vertical, observable in the primary plane of this section sensu. It's pretty technical and detailed, but the authors conclude the study expands our knowledge regarding the 3D histology of the button-like ossicles of ankylosaurs and provides new data on the spatial organization of the collagen fiber bundles, on cells localization, and on the vascularization. Our data support that the ossicles were at least partially formed by metaplasia. Now, what is metaplasia? It's the conversion from one type of normal adult cell to another type of normal adult cell. The most common types of metaplasia observed by pathologists involve the conversion from squamous to glandular cells and vice versa. That isn't a lot clearer to me, but examples that make sense are if you're a smoker or if you have like acid reflux. The regular cells in your lungs or throat respond and adapt to be tougher in response to the smoke or acid, respectively. In this way, normal adult cells in your lungs or throat respond and adapt and convert into a different type of normal adult cell to respond to the acid reflux or to the smoke inhalation. So the study is suggesting that the dermal ossicles are formed by a process of metaplasia, conversion of one cell into another. This suggests, quote, that this process is supplemented by the cell-induced differentiation of new fiber bundles laid down immediately prior to their incorporation into the fibrous system and its mineralization. The new fiber bundles keep a structure and organization similar to those of a typical metaplastic tissue, to which they become superficially added. This process explains the progressive diametric expansion of the fiber bundles as the whole ossicle expands centrifugally. It is likely that this system of horizontal fiber bundles in the ossicle is more involved in direct metaplasia, while the vertical fiber system is more involved with the neoplastic process we suggest. The authors don't suppose this is the entire explanation for how ossicles grew, though. Quote, the probability that other mechanisms are required to account for the structures of the ossicles deserves further discussion. The superficial part of the ossicle is formed by the peculiar mineralized tissue that is not bone, and it requires further studies to be properly understood. Ankylosaur osteoderms are distinctive among dinosaur genera and species. Since ankylosaur dinosaurs were widely believed to have been solitary animals, even isolated ossicles are important fossils to collect, demonstrating the local occurrence of ankylosaur taxa in specific stratigraphic contexts. Going from news about the ossicles on top of ankylosaurs, the next few stories are about the very bottoms of ankylosaurs, the trackways that they leave behind. The paper Dinosaur Tracks from the Guará Formation in Brazil shed light on the biodiversity of a South American Late Jurassic humid desert. Published in the Journal of South American Earth Sciences in February 2025, marks the second record of Ankylosauria in the Guará Formation. Quote, the ankylosaur track is tetradactyl and paraxonic, says the paper, which means that the tracks are four-toed, with most of the weight balancing over two central toes. The tracks are, quote, asymmetrical with low divarication angles, and the sole is robust and rounded, which the authors interpret as an under-track. The tracks are likely attributable to two ichnogenera, either Tetrapodosaurus or Metatetrapos. Quote, these new records are crucial for understanding the history of dinosaurs during the Upper Jurassic, filling gaps in the vertebrate history of western Gondwana, they say. The first ankylosaur tracks in this formation were described in 2018, which featured, quote, a high degree of erosion with indistinct edges, which gave uncertainty to the record. However, it was possible to identify heteropody, paraxony, and tetradactyly in the tracks of Manus and Pez, whose morphology is similar to Metatetrapus valedensis from the Lower Cretaceous of Germany. Through paleoichnological, osteological, and stratigraphic analyses, the study concluded that the track maker is possibly a nodosaurid ankylosaur, which would represent the oldest, read Late Jurassic, evidence of the thyreophorans in South America. This group is common in the Cretaceous of Laurasia, which could indicate that the mentioned tracks may be an indication that the group was already present in Gondwana during the Late Jurassic. The new ankylosaur track presented here in this paper, which has clearly visible diagnostic features, corroborates the first record made in 2018, supporting the author's hypotheses. The Guará Formation is interpreted as Late Jurassic, somewhere around the Kimmeridgian or Tithonian, which is the age of like Allosaurus, Brachiosaurus, Stegosaurus, and Diplodocus, not an age where you picture ankylosaurs. Through that lens, corroborating a hypothesis that ankylosaurs are present in the Late Jurassic is significant. Our final news story that catches us up on what's been published on Ankylosaurs lately is a paper named A New Thyreophoran Ichnotaxon from British Columbia, Canada, confirms the presence of ankylosaurid dinosaurs in the mid-Cretaceous of North America, published in the Journal of Vertebrate Paleontology in April 2025. Among ankylosaurs, says the paper, quote, only ankylosaurids have 3 pedal digits rather than 4, making this the first known track morphotype for ankylosaurid Ankylosaurus. This new taxon is currently known exclusively from the Cenomanian of northeastern British Columbia and northwestern Alberta, and provides confirmation that ankylosaurid ankylosaurs were present in North America prior to the Campanian Maastrichtian. The new ichnospecies is named Ruopodosaurus clava, and it's found in the same localities and deposits as Tetrapodosaurus borealis, indicating that both ankylosaurid and non-ankylosaurid ankylosaurs coexisted in the mid-Cretaceous of the Peace region. The authors derived the name ruo, Latin for tumble down, and podo, Greek for foot, and sauros, which is ancient Greek for lizard, making this the tumble-down foot lizard in reference to the prevalence of these tracks near the town of Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia. And clava is Latin for club, referring to it presumably having a club tail, as has been identified as an ankylosaurid ankylosaur. Recall, nodosaurid ankylosaurs are generally interpreted as not having a tail club, which is what the term non-ankylosaurid ankylosaurs would be referring to. The holotype fossil TRMF 2023.09.022 is housed at the Tumbler Ridge Museum and was uncovered from the Cascapau Formation. It's comprised of a Manus and Pez natural cast as an ichthyofossil. So 2 new species, 2 new genus, a detailed exploration into the dermal ossicles, and 2 new ichnogenuses in the past 2 years helps bring us up to date. That's the latest on ankylosaurs. Thanks for tuning into Dinosaurs Lately. If you'd like to find links to the materials discussed on today's show, you can visit dinosauraslately.blogspot.com, which is a companion piece to the Dinosaurs Lately podcast. Dinosaurs Lately is a companion show to the Juras-Sick Park-Cast, the podcast where guests chat with me about Michael Crichton's 1990 novel Jurassic Park, and also Not That Too. And if you'd like to be a guest on that show, you can reach me at ryansrogers@gmail.com. These podcasts are part of the Spring Chickens banner of amateur intellectual properties, including the Spring Chickens Funny Pages, Tomb of the Undead graphic novel, the Second Lapse graphic novelettes, The Infantry, and the worst of them all, the King Street Capers. And you can find links to all that baggage in the show notes by visiting the schickens.blogspot.com. You can connect and follow on Facebook at facebook.com/springchickencapers, on YouTube by searching for the Juras-Sick Park-Cast podcast, or Tumblr at Mr. Rogers22, on X at RogersRyan22, or on Blue Sky at RogersRyan22.bsky.social. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you're feeling all caught up on ankylosaurs. For now, until next time.